Cleveland Orchestra is doing their summer concert series out at Blossom, and they're doing Raiders of the Lost Ark last weekend of this month, the 29th and 30th out there. They're doing Lord of the Rings, they're doing Raiders, there's a whole lot more. You can see the entire 2024 Blossom Orchestra schedule there. clevelandorchestra.com has the details for you, but they'll play that iconic score that last weekend of the month. I have 4-pack of tickets for you for that first night. That is Saturday, June 29th. 4 tickets. You get my last 2 pair this week. Good luck. Call 10-216-578-1007 or 800-348-1007.
If he sounds super excited to see you,
Hey, what's up?
remember, he is a paid performer.
As a broadcaster, he's real good.
Alan Cox on 100.7 WMMS.
His hands are moist and full of splooge. Festering wounds start to ooze. Why you got to say those things, AC? Seepage is beyond repair. Phlegm and mucus everywhere. Why you got to say those things, AC? AC, 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 AC. Why you got to say those things, AC? AC, 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 AC. Please don't say them just because you can.
Oh, what a beautiful song, courtesy of Sean out in Brooklyn there.
That's great.
It's very good. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. That is.
I was reminded of that song because I was watching the tail end of Wheel of Fortune the other night, and the word moist was in one of the... So they'd picked a food or something, you know. One of the words was moist. I'm a Jeopardy watcher myself, but I will catch the last few minutes of Wheel of Fortune, and so I'm watching the end of that or whatever. And today is Pat Sajak's last show on Wheel of Fortune.
Oh.
They've already been taped. I don't know when they taped it. They do 5 or 6 episodes of Wheel of Fortune a day. He and Vanna. And he has been hosting that show for 41 years, he and Vanna White. And so they both recorded a goodbye to each other and to the audience. And Pat Sajak finishing a long, long run. He announced last year, of course, he was retiring, and then they announced shortly after that they had Ryan Seacrest waiting in the wings. Which I think would be a fun gig. I mean, again, I'm not a Wheel of Fortune watcher, but I mean, you know, there's not much to it, and it would be fun to toss that around a little bit. But Pat Sajak, I don't know what his next act is. He's
Probably just retirement.
probably,
right?
I don't know. Yeah,
old.
some people, they always say retirement, and then, you know, about a year later, they're like, well, I don't know if the guy plays golf or whatever, but he's a Chicago boy, you know, so I got to give it up to him for that. He's a guy who started in radio. He was in Vietnam, and he took over. Remember Adrian Cronauer?
Yeah.
The Good Morning Vietnam guy. That's the guy that Robin Williams played in the movie Good Morning Vietnam. His name was Adrian Cronauer. And Pat Sajak had taken over Adrian Cronauer's show. And so there was a period of time where he would still end the show with, or sign on rather, with Good Morning Vietnam. But Pat Sajak won like a teenage DJ contest at this long-time oldies station in Chicago. It was WJMK. And so he was a teenage disc jockey, and then he started moving around the country like you do in radio. And he got out to L.A. and started, he was a TV weatherman in Los Angeles. And then Merv Griffin, who was the creator of Wheel of Fortune and a bunch of other game shows, asked if he would want to take over. Do you remember who used to host Wheel of Fortune before? This is before this is probably before your time, obviously. But a lot of people forget there was a guy named Chuck Woolery.
Okay, I know
He
the
was
name.
the host of Wheel of Fortune. A lot of people remember him from Love Connection, right? Back in 2 and 2,
yeah.
Chuck Woolery. I was a kid when Pat Sajak started on Wheel of Fortune, but they used to have a daytime version and a nighttime version. The syndicated nighttime thing And then they had a daytime version that would run on NBC. And for a while, Pat Sajak was doing both of them. And then they were like, well, we're just going to have you do the syndicated one. And so he ended up hosting that show longer than Bob Barker hosted The Price is Right. Pat Sajak has got that Guinness World Record. And he would show up in things, he was in Airplane 2, and he was, he'd show up in movies every so often playing himself. And he's a conservative guy, and so he's said things from time to time that rub people the wrong way, but big deal, whatever. If you were to follow him on social media, he was much more pointed in his comments than obviously you're going to be on Wheel of Fortune. But the guy's had a hell of a career. I remember there was in the 80s on Saturday Night Live, Martin Short did a character named Ed Grimley. And one of his jokes was that he was constantly, he was enthralled with Pat Sajak. And so there was this headshot of Pat Sajak on the wall, and that was just kind of part of the set there. But it was funny. And so that kind of put Pat Sajak in people's minds, too. I mean, he was, because Ed Grimley was... You remember
character.
Ed Grimley
Yeah,
had like
I
the
do.
greasy, unicorn-type hair, what I must say, and all that. And... So, yeah, Pat Sajak's been around a long, long time. And his last Wheel of Fortune episode is tonight. Vanna White is sticking out a little bit longer because she finally, after 37 years, they gave her a raise. Because they're like, look, Pat's leaving. It took Pat leaving for them to agree to give her more money. So she's going to stick around for a couple of more seasons because they pretty much doubled what they were giving her. And I guess they figured that will be the bridge between the Sajak and Seacrest administrations.
You made me who I am. You really did. As the years have gone by, we've grown up on television, but we've also shared so much more behind the scenes. And as much fun as we had on camera, those memories, milestones, and life events we shared with our families outside the studio are my favorite. We've watched our children grow up together. We've traveled all over the world. We've eaten hundreds of meals together. We've laughed. We've cried. We've celebrated. Oh, gosh. What an incredible and unforgettable journey we've had.
Oh, she's heartbroken. She's tearful. She's emotional. Vanna White famously, it was a big scandal over there at Wheel of Fortune because she had been in Playboy. Remember the Vanna White Playboy?
I mean, I was very young when that came out, but since then I've looked it up.
Oh, yeah? Is it online?
Yeah.
I know they have copies of it on eBay that you can get, the Vanna White Playboy. She's, of course, said later on that she was embarrassed by it. It was May of 1987, so she had only been on that show for a few years. But she said that she has regrets about it because she was a good Southern girl, I guess. I don't know what her thought process is, but so she recorded a big thing for Pat because they didn't want to do it live or they didn't want to do it to each other, right? Mm-hmm. That's not that kind of place. But... and then Pat recorded his own message to the audience.
It's been an incredible privilege to be invited into millions of homes, night after night, year after year, decade after decade. And I've always felt that the privilege came with a responsibility to keep this daily half hour a safe place for family fun. No social issues, no politics, nothing embarrassing, I hope, just a game. But gradually it became more than that.
Right in the butt.
A place where kids learned their letters, where people from other countries honed their English skills, where families came together along with friends and neighbors and entire generations. What an honor to have played even a small part in all that. Thank you for allowing me into your lives.
Yeah, long time there. I remember he had a talk show when I was in high school, the Pat Sajak Show. This was a time, late 80s.
Man, why'd they call that? They called it, "What do you say, Jack?"
Well, I think It's Pat was already taken by Saturday Night Live.
Right, but
so.
What do you say, Jack works.
What do you say, Jack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty good, too. The Pat Sajak Show. It was very short-lived. It lasted one season. It was like, it lasted one season. But we were peeking in on it because late 80s, everybody was trying to come up with a Carson killer. Everybody was trying to find out, hey, who can we put on, and this was CBS at the time, who can we put on that might make some inroads with Johnny Carson? And, of course, one by one, these networks would find out that nobody could.
Yeah.
Arsenio did, but, I mean, that was kind of the beginning of the end of Carson anyway. He already had
he was already doing, like, half as many shows a year because they were having
Yes.
guest hosts all the time. In those that
Shandling
era.
and Jay
Yeah.
Leno. And so Carson already had a number of soft spots that they could get him on. But I remember the Pat Sajak Show, they had initially approached him to do Wheel of Fortune, and he said no because he wanted to do a talk show. And then he ended up taking the Wheel of Fortune thing. But one of those producers came back to him a few years later and said, hey, CBS wants to put something on against Carson to see how it does. And Pat Sajak said, okay. So they spent a lot of money, and he signed a guaranteed 2-year contract, which was smart. If you're going to start up a show against Carson and they go, we'll give you 2 years, great, because you're not going to last that long. And he didn't. They paid him $60,000 a week. And he was very clear. He's like, I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel here at all. This is going to be very much kind of a standard talk show, but they figured that, he was so liked from Wheel of Fortune and a popular pop culture guy that, hey, maybe something's here. Ironically, his very first guest was Chevy Chase, who would go on to have an even worse talk show over at Fox. That Chevy Chase show was just god-awful. But the Pat Sajak Show, and again, it didn't last long, but it got a lot of attention right before it got canceled because they had Rush Limbaugh guest host. And he basically turned it into a television version of his show. Rush Limbaugh could never get television to work because who the hell wanted to look at Rush Limbaugh? No one. So the radio show, he was unbelievably successful. Whatever you think of Rush Limbaugh, professionally, in this business, unbelievable. But on television, nobody wanted to look at him. But yeah, he filled in for Pat Sajak. I think they knew the writing was on the wall, so they were like, I don't care. And he was like yelling at women in the audience, turning it into the, Pat into the Rush Limbaugh show or whatever. And so, yeah, they signed Pat Sajak for a couple of years. He lasted one, and he still had Wheel of Fortune. So he didn't care. He took a shot at it, better than, not doing it. But it was right after that Letterman left NBC. CBS signed him for a ton of money, and then the rest was history. But that Pat Sajak Show, for whatever reason, my mom would always watch the new late-night talk shows, and they would pop up. Alan Thicke had one. It's called Thick of the Night.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Dees had one. I think that was called Into the Night with Rick Dees. Pat Sajak had one. These all were very, very short-lived, but I just remember my mom watching them, and so if I was up, I was watching it. So he had his little foray into that, but when you got a gig like he had on Wheel of Fortune, you're not going to go anywhere. You just stay with it, because why not? You make a ton of money. Because what do all these actors and people say now? They go, oh, I'd love to host a game show. Where I was clicking around last night, there's game shows on, I don't even realize they're on. You know Elizabeth Banks hosts an update of Press Your Luck?
No. The fact that you click around is still crazy. Like,
I have Hulu Live, so I look around.
I got DirecTV Live, but I just don't click. I either know what I'm going to watch, but I never just scroll through the channels.
Well, all my daughter ever wants to watch, ever. I used to be able to get her to Simpsons once in a blue moon still. All she ever wants to watch is Bob's Burgers.
Uh-huh.
And I love Bob's Burgers, right? But I don't want to watch it all the time. And so anyway, she was doing something, and I go, I'm going to click around here. And I thought it was the Game Show Network, and I thought they were showing old episodes of Press Your Luck. And I'm like, ooh, you got to watch this, the whammies and the whole thing. No, it's an update with Elizabeth Banks hosting. And, oh, god damn, is she gorgeous. Elizabeth Banks. But, I mean, they've got all these other nighttime game shows now. Chris Hardwick's got the one with the giant balls on it, and Our buddy Jay Farrow's got one called the Wall, or I don't know what the hell it's called, or Who's Got Balls? Something like that. Yeah. Because all these people are like, oh, game shows are so fun, and they would be. They'd be super fun to host. And if you're somebody who's been doing it as long as Pat Sajak, or even Jeopardy, any of those long-running shows, you do 5 or 6 of them a day. So you can do a whole season in a pretty short period of time. And you're making millions of dollars, and you have like 9 months of the year off. And you're traveling, you're doing stuff, you're shooting interstitials. Hey, me and Vanna are here in Rome. Would you like to?
We're here in Rome. Let's go to a Broadway show.
Broadway show. They're not in front of a green screen. They like fly them to Rome.
Yeah.
To shoot stuff, and it'd be great. So anyway, Pat Sajak's very last episode on Wheel of Fortune is tonight.
All right. Of all the game shows, like we'll call it the big 4 that I feel like have been around the longest. You got Jeopardy, you got Wheel of Fortune, you got Price is Right, and Let's Make a Deal. Which one would you want to host?
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy?
Yeah. Because Jeopardy. Well, let me think. Which one's on?
See, I'm going Price is Right. Price is Right.
Yeah,
fun.
that would
There's
be fun. I mean,
yeah. It's just
Jeopardy's pretty nerdy.
Jeopardy's just it's so repetitive, I feel like. Yeah. Whereas there's more chance and just kind of silliness around Price is Right.
Well, it'd be more for me. It would be more fun to host Jeopardy because you always have the answers. So you sound like you know what you're talking about all the time, even though you're just reading them off. But
who cares about that?
But even when I'm at home and somebody gets it, like last night on Jeopardy, I was killing Jeopardy last night. Normally, I'm not that good. Last night, I was murdering. And Gwen wasn't even in the room, so she didn't even see me kill it. But
I don't believe it then.
But as I'm watching the show, somebody will get something, and I'm constantly like out loud, I'm going, God, good for you. Oh my God, that's great. People will have stuff, they'll pluck this information.
They put out a bunch of episodes of like old episodes of Jeopardy on Netflix a few years ago, and I was dating a girl that was pretty smart, and we'd watch episodes, and she would just rattle off answer after answer after answer. I was really, even if she just had seen the episodes and memorized it, it was still impressive because she knew pretty much every answer. And then a sports category came up, and I'm like, you're pretty quiet right now.
Oh, yeah. And so are the people on Jeopardy. It's so funny
thing.
when they have sports. They're like, this athlete, unless
it's 6 championships with the Chicago Bulls, and they're like, wow.
No, unless it's got to be Jordan level for them to know, right? It's got to be that. What did they have the other night? They had it was a picture clue, and it was Russell Westbrook, and it was crickets.
That's so funny.
I'm like, oh, even I knew that. That's how bad it was. Yeah, anything sports. If you give them 17th century European wars, they kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sports,
this
not so much.
quarterback was just roasted on Netflix. Otto Graham?
Doug Flutie?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Thomas Brady Esquire.
Joe Montana? I don't
Yeah.
know.
So it's, yeah. So anyway, it is weird, though. I don't know why so many game show hosts are, like, conservative. There's a lot of people that give Pat Sajak a hard time.
I think it's the suits.
You think that's what it is? But, like, even Chuck Woolery, even before him, Chuck Woolery's, like, really, like, conservative dude. Wink Martindale and Drew Carey and Bob Barker and Ben Stein and, So I don't know. I don't know
Drew
what
Carey really conservative?
I mean, he mostly donates to Republican candidates, yeah.
Does he?
Which is his right. I'm like, your whole business model is handouts.
Yeah.
How are all you guys conservative? I don't understand it. But they all kind of lean that way. But anyway, Pat Sajak, he's had a hell of a career, and he wraps it tonight on Wheel, right in the butt.
Drew Carey is an outspoken libertarian.
That's for people who don't want to admit